Well, and lastly, in this part, then it's career plan.
No, sorry.
Oh yeah, okay.
Just something there. Yeah.
Okay, so last in this section, career plan
Yeah.
is mostly about your future, what you plan to do after you return. But what is a career plan for you?
Yeah, Eric, I think in this section, actually, what you have to do is you have to answer in a concise and rational way, right? You have to link your what, how, and your why. I think it's really important always coming back to your why,
Yeah.
right? And
Essential,
right? Be very clear about what you wrote in your application, right? Because you don't want to give a bad impression of what you talk is not exactly what is in your career plan.
Yeah.
So remember to read your career plan. But what is a good career plan, right? So I think your plan should be smart, right? Smart, I mean specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. I think those are the ingredients that makes a good career plan. What do you have to say,
well,
right?
it's a smart approach.
Yeah, it's a smart approach, right?
But yeah, it's really true what you say. And if we try to put it into the context of how you translate it to your reality, I think that it's a good idea to break your plan into manageable parts, starting with a short-term plan. For example,
yeah, you're right.
You will have a short-term plan which essentially should start with your work plan. How do you plan to be developing yourself professionally? Will you be an employee or will you be an entrepreneur? If you will be an employee, will you be in a private enterprise or in a public organization?
That's important.
Then after that, you have to think of what will be different right away. What is it that you're gonna change as soon as you come back? Because it's not that interesting for the embassy if you're going to go back and do exactly the same things that you were doing. That should be your differentiating factor.
Yeah.
Later, when you finish with your short-term plan, then you should have a mid-term plan, which is essentially, I would say, a period of 2 to 5 years after you have returned. And it's important that you build upon what you talked about in your short-term plan.
Yeah, right.
Here, if you said that you were going to be an employee in a short term, if you plan to be an employee by the midterm, why is it relevant to stay in that organization? How are you adding value there? Why haven't you changed? You don't have to change. But if you don't, why is the reasoning, why is that organization so good to stay there? If not, why did you change to another organization? If you were going to be an entrepreneur, where do you see your enterprise in 5 years? Or where do you see yourself within your enterprise in 5 years? That talks really well of how you envision yourself in that time.
Right.
Lastly, I would go with a long-term plan, and that would be more of a 5 or 6 to 10 year plans, which sounds quite far. Both you and the panel the panel is aware, but you also have to be aware that 10 years is something that you're kind of dreaming somehow, realistic, but still dreaming. And there you have a lot of space to be ambitious, to portray yourself in a very good and different position where you can thrust change in your society. And I guess that's a kind of a way to make your plan smart.
Yeah, Eric, I would just add one point in your long-term goal. I think as we aspire to be a leader, in the long-term goal, it's good if you are visionary, right?
Yeah.
You should have that vision. How do you envision yourself, your company, or your country, the world itself. Actually, be ambitious. Don't be afraid to be ambitious.
Don't be afraid at all.
As we have said, be realistic as well, right? But you need to have that vision.
That vision.
Mindset. I think it's really important. Additionally, another strategy that it's important to add on a subject that is important to include in your career plan is that you have to involve the British Embassy in what you do. So go out there, investigate what the British Embassy has been doing in your country. Go to their Facebook, website, social media in general, right? Try to understand their projects, right? What's their vision? What's the kind of cooperation that they are trying to build in your country? And you can actually associate this with your career.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So, what have you done? Like, how did you approach this?
Yeah. In my case, I was aware that, as we talked a little bit about earlier, that the British government was investing important amounts of resources in the Dominican Republic construction sector.
That's interesting.
So I basically went to their website and looked for the specific figures about it, and I brought them to the panel. I discussed with the panel that they were investing this amount of money in this part of the construction sector and this other amount of money in this part of the construction sector. And then with my British education and the strategies of the construction technology implementation strategies that I had, I could bring a potential benefit to their investment and make their investments more efficient. So somehow I linked their project with my career, with what I wanted to do and what I learned while studying there. But what about you? What was the context between the United Kingdom and Angola back then in your interview?
So, Eric, I noticed that there are some similarities on how we have approached our interview, right? And that's probably what makes us successful interview, right? So what I have done actually is I went to their website, to their Facebook page, and I was aware that they were involved in improving the business environment in my country, right? So I mentioned in my career plan that I wanted to develop a specific project to improve or increase the entrepreneurial activities in Angola. So if you see that there is a link between my studies, the British Embassy engagement in my country, right? And it's important to connect this because it's not just a get. It's the give part as well.
Networking,
right? The network,
get,
give, and
how you connect.
So it's all linked. So I think that's very important if you include that. That's what makes a smart plan, right?
Agree.
So I think we are done for this section.
Not only for this section, but a whole chapter 2, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So see you in the next one, right?
See you in the closure.
In the closure.